Spring and summer travel season is here, but before you pack your bags, it's important to get your finances in order. Yahoo Finance shares expert tips to help you budget for your trip, no matter your age. And first, we uncover the hidden or forgotten costs and key advice for Gen Z and Millennials. We've got budgeting tips for Gen Z and Millennials. Hello, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And Haley Berg from the Hopper, lead economist over there, joins us now. Haley, there's a lot of uncertainty around the health of the economy right now. And should younger travelers be prioritizing saving over trips? We were just having the discussion between me and the control room during the break about this very thing.
Really, travelers can do both, save and keep a little bit left over for spending on travel. It all comes down to flexibility and maybe some changing of expectations. We've seen a lot of high cost vacations booked, especially to destinations like Tokyo and Sicily, especially by younger generations of travelers in the last few years. Now, during an economic contraction, we'll probably see travelers stay a little bit closer to home, but there is still a lot you can do within a travel budget close to home: staycations, more domestic and regional flights, and planning ahead to reduce the cost of travel. But flexibility is really key. Even if a budget is shrinking, being flexible on where you go and when can really impact your budget. My favorite example: everyone loves a summer vacation. If you shift your summer vacation dates from July and August to September, you can save about 30% on your hotels and your flights. Huge savings for someone who's on a budget.
Wow. So how can we optimize our travel planning to stay in budget?
Flexibility is number one, especially on when you travel. If you can say you're going away for spring break, if you can shift your dates to weekday departures and skip that Sunday return, maybe come back on a 6 a.m. flight Monday morning, you can save hundreds on international airfare and typically around $75 on domestic airfare. But I also love to say, follow the deal, not the destination. Oftentimes we have an idea of where we want to go on vacation. Maybe it's a beach getaway, maybe it's a European vacation. If you're not tied to a specific city, look at all of the options available to you. My favorite example in Europe is Portugal. There are a lot of low-cost carriers who fly from the east coast of the US direct to Portugal. The airfares are low. Portugal is a low-cost country to travel within, and gives you access to the rest of Europe if you do want to go to one of those more expensive traditional tourist cities.
And so what is the best way to pay for a trip? Is it cash or is it credit?
It's the way you can afford it most,
That works.
but there are a lot of options when you're booking travel. So we've come a long way from just credit or debit being your only options when booking travel online. Today, you can book with a credit card, a debit card, via Apple Pay, Google Pay, and also with things like buy now, pay later options, or with rewards points. What I recommend for travelers is to check your piggy banks wherever they are, your rewards points, saved value you have with specific travel providers, and then book the way that makes the most sense for you. If you get extra points by booking with a particular credit card you have, can you combine booking with that credit card with using some of the points that you already have to shave a couple dollars off the top of your trip? Or try buy now, pay later. It's a favorite of Gen Zers and Millennials. Help divide up the payments for a more expensive trip, whether it be a resort stay or just a more expensive airfare.
All right, so for buy now, pay later, because we mentioned it, what is the decision tree around determining whether or not you should be doing BNPL for travel budgeting?
One of the best advantages of buy now, pay later in travel budgeting is oftentimes when you book travel, you have to pay up front for everything, whether it be your hotel stay or your airfare. And that can be a big ticket item, maybe a couple $1,000s combined if you're going on one of those bigger vacations. The advantage of buy now, pay later is you can spread payments for that trip over multiple months, typically with a low or a 0% interest rate. That said, you should only be using buy now, pay later if you can afford the trip outright. It's a great way to spread the payments over time, reduce the load on a particular month. But even if there's no interest, you still can face late payments and you do still need to pay all of the payments in the term. So really only use buy now, pay later as a tool in your toolkit. Don't use it as a way to spend more than you can afford on your trip.
Haley, always sound advice. Thanks so much for joining us. You're reframing how I think about some upcoming trips. Appreciate it.
Great being with you, Brad.
40% of consumers plan to travel this year. That's up from 28% in 2024, according to a Bank of America survey. Up next, we'll break down the best steps that families can take to make vacations fit their budget. Finding great deals and saving for a trip doesn't have to be complicated. Bank of America's Mary Hines Drosch shares tips to help families plan smart. 40% of consumers say they're prioritizing spending on travel this year. That is up from 28% in 2024, according to a Bank of America survey. So, how can families work together to fit travel into their budget? Joining me now, back on set, we've got Mary Hines Drosch, who is Bank of America's Head of Product for Consumer Business and Wealth Management, Banking and Lending. Great to see you again.
Great to see you.
So let's talk about this here a little bit, because consumer sentiment data shows many Americans are feeling uncertain about the U.S. economy going forward, but we all need some relief, some relaxation, some rest. Should they be prioritizing travel over saving right now?
Well, you want to be financially responsible, and having financial stress is not good. So you certainly need to have a cushion. We recommend between 3 months to a year of your monthly expenses in that cushion. But it doesn't mean you have to cut travel out altogether. You just need to do it in an affordable way.
So how can families fit travel into their budget? What are the first steps that they need to be taking?
Well, what's really helpful is to be flexible. Now, that's harder when you have kids because you're sometimes bound by their vacation. But look for things that you can do that you can drive to instead of flying. Go off peak. Also, instead of renting hotel rooms, which can be really hard if you have a large family, you might need 2 or 3 rooms, rent a house. That enables you to cut costs on hotel, but also then you can eat in that house sometimes instead of going out.
Certainly. So what are the best ways to save up for a planned vacation, putting those expenses together and really knowing what the marker is that you need to hit?
Yeah, well, come up with what your budget is. Where do you want to go? I just got back from a ski trip with my family.
Congrats.
Thank you. I survived, is all I'll say. But that's expensive because you have the equipment, the lift tickets, the airfare. So really lay out what your costs are for that vacation and put a target date for it, and then allocate a certain amount of money with every paycheck to that account. Either create a separate travel account or use some automated tools that move money directly from your checking account into your savings account.
And what about couples? How can you work together to prepare for a trip?
Well, that can be hard because couples aren't always on the same page. And so that's start with, what are your priorities? Where do you want to go? Like with my family, my husband likes extra legroom. I don't care. I'm short. I'd rather have a nicer hotel. So figure out what means the most and come up with that plan. And remember, not everything has to cost money. If you go on a beach vacation, you just really need a bathing suit. Hikes are free. So have that balance of those special excursions that cost money with just doing things together.
Some key reminders there. So also, how can families find deals to maximize savings?
Well, there are a lot of apps out there that collect all of the deals, and you should really look at those to make sure you're getting the best price on whether airfare or hotel. Also, take advantage of all the loyalty programs for airfare, hotels, excursions, because then you can actually earn rewards to help pay. And then always use a rewards card when you're traveling or making those purchases so you can offset yours. Like the trip I just took to Utah, all of my flights were covered by my Bank of America rewards points.
Wow. All right. Sounds like you're layering some rewards out there and putting those all together to make the trip happen. Mary, thanks so much. Sounds
Thank
like you guys had a great trip. 77% of global consumers plan to maintain or increase their international travel plans in 2025. That's according to American Express. For those heading abroad, there are hidden costs that could take a big bite out of your budget. Joining me now with some tips to save your wallet this summer, we've got Daniel Green. He is the co-founder and chief technology officer at Fay Travel Insurance. Good to have you here with us. What are some of those hidden costs that consumers might not think about when traveling abroad?
Absolutely. So every time you use your credit card or a debit card when you're abroad, you're often hit with a fee that you don't notice called a cross-border fee. That can be as much as 1% of the transaction. When you're traveling on a budget, that can really take a bite out of your spending.
And so, how can consumers afford or avoid, rather, those foreign exchange fees as well that you could incur?
So you can't always get away from the fees entirely, but there are a number of banks that will offer free ATM transactions abroad, and it's always worth talking to your bank or doing your research. There are a lot of them around. Some of them will even refund you. So if you get hit by a hidden fee, you can show them the statement, they'll give you the money back. And that can save you a lot when you're traveling if you want to work with cash.
So, what are some of the do's and don'ts for if you run out of cash when you're abroad?
So firstly, it's always a good idea to have a few US dollars on you, keep them stashed either in your suitcase or a money belt. It's a good backup, and most countries, people will always take it, at least at hotels. You should use local ATMs. Don't try and get the foreign currency abroad. It's usually cheaper to get it in the country. And at the end of the day, cash will always be king if you're wanting to save a few dollars in most countries.
What is the rule of thumb? As you mentioned ATMs, I got to ask, what is the rule of thumb for when it is a correct or safe ATM to use abroad versus one that might seem a little sketchy?
You're always better off going to an ATM that's associated with a bank. It's better to go during the day. It's better to go in public areas. Usually, if you're in the middle of a very tourist area and you see a little old ATM just outside of a corner store, those are the ones you should avoid, and definitely avoid the ones at the airport. They will always charge you extra fees.
So, what are some of the top destinations where Americans can get the most value for their dollar right now?
So right now, people should really consider staying in the US, traveling domestically, not hitting any of these fees that we're talking about, and enjoying places like the great outdoors. But the US dollar is going pretty strong, and some of the best ways to do it is to travel, just not go to the main destinations. So go to Mexico where the exchange rate is strong. Instead of Cancun, maybe go to Cabo. Go to Portugal, go to Porto instead of Lisbon. The wine is great. It's a day trip to the main cities, and your dollar goes much further, where the euro is about 90 euro cents right now. And if you really want to go abroad, one of the best places in Asia right now is Vietnam. Plus, the added bonus, there's almost no direct flights, so you get to have a free layover somewhere in Asia as well.
All right. What are some tips to stay in budget then for any vacation?
So it's really important to try and agree and decide on the budget before you leave. It's much easier to be strong and make good decisions before the trip started than when you're standing at the counter and thinking, I really want one more souvenir. If you're paying with things like Apple Pay or Google Pay, you'll usually get real-time updates on your phone as to how much you've spent along the way, or check in with your bank app. Just as we said at the beginning, sometimes you're hit by hidden fees, and it's a good idea to keep track of how you're going. Don't look at the end of the trip. Actually look at some point in the middle. Pack light. You can always buy more clothes or do laundry. And if you are going to go to destinations, consider going to a ski resort in summer. You'll save a fortune. It's still beautiful. Off-peak times can be really powerful.
Daniel Green, thanks so much for taking the time here with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
70% of adults 50 and older are planning trips this year. Coming up, we explore how to travel strategically as you approach retirement. Finally, we look at travel strategies for older adults as they prepare for the spring and summer travel season. More older adults plan to travel this year. 70% of those aged 50 and up are planning trips. That's up from 65% in 2024, according to AARP. They expect to take about 3.6 trips total in 2025, going at least 50 miles from home for 2 days or more. For those who are near or in retirement, could the recent market volatility shake up some of those vacation plans? That's the big question. Joining me now, we've got Josh Jelinski. He is the CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Jelinski Advisory Group and author of the book, Retirement Reality Check. Josh, great to have you here. What do you recommend to retirees who may be spooked by some of the recent market volatility and considering canceling that upcoming trip?
Well, I don't think you should cancel it. You know, we talk about in my book, Retirement Reality Check, and on my podcast, The Financial Quarterback, how to spend, live, and give without regret. So your financial plan should be set up so that you don't have regrets when you die, which means take that extra vacation. Now, if you don't have money saved up, you shouldn't be going. You need an emergency fund of 6 months in the bank. And you should also have what I call a volatility buffer. That's 1 to 3 years in cold, hard cash. That way, you can tap that when we are experiencing the volatility like we're experiencing now with the Trump tariff tantrum, as I call it.
So how does travel fit into a retiree's budget?
I think it should be a critical component of your budget. If, maybe 10, 20%, I mean, you should be planning 2 or 3 trips a year. What is the day that you spend the most during the week when you're working? And I ask that question to everybody, and they say Saturday or Sunday or Friday night when you're off, right? So you should be designing your retirement plan as if every day is a Saturday. You don't want to have to, go back to work because you can't take that trip to Alaska. I meet with too many couples and retirees and help them with their money. And when I meet them and have the good fortune of helping them steward their finances for 20 years, 10 years, the biggest hurt is that when they have regrets, I didn't take that trip with the kids. I didn't take that trip with my wife. They don't say, I wish I had another $10,000 in my 401k.
Certainly. So what accounts, with regard to those accounts, what account should retirees be pulling money from to pay for travel?
Number one, your taxable accounts. Those are already taxed monies. High yield savings accounts, CDs, bank accounts, then your tax deferred accounts, and then your Roths. You really want to grow your Roths for the future because they grow tax free. And you only really want to take out the IRAs and 401ks when you need to when you turn 73, unless you have some type of strategic Roth conversion plan or something like that.
Some really great advice and tips for planning that travel, even if you are in retirement, and especially if you're in retirement, I should say. Josh, thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
Thank you.
Spring travel season is underway, and we want to give you a foolproof guide to maximizing credit card rewards to help pay for your next trip. Joining me now, an expert on this, Clint Henderson, managing editor at The Points Guy. So Clint, good to have you in here in the studio with us. How does one pick the best travel card for their needs?
So it's going to really depend on what airport you're flying from, what airline you like to fly. But that's why I like to tell people, just get one of the premium credit cards with a transferable currency. So Amex, Chase, Capital One, Bilt, they all transfer to various partners. It's going to give you a lot more flexibility. And these cards have huge annual fees, but if you maximize them, you can more than make up for the cost of the annual fee. So in the case of American Express, $700. There's speculation it could go up even higher, but they have so many credits, travel credits that you can get, Uber credits, restaurant credits, all kinds of interesting things that you can do to offset that annual fee.
What cards do you recommend for frequent travelers out there?
So I would say the American Express Platinum is my go-to. Even though it's outrageously expensive. The Chase Sapphire Preferred is a basic card, $95 a year, but it gives you a $50 hotel credit. It gives you a big sign-up bonus, which is the way you really build up those miles and points. The Chase Sapphire Reserve is a higher-end card that has travel credits as well, up to $300. And then the the Capital One Venture card, another one with big travel credits that you can maximize. And so these annual fees can be scary to people, but a lot of times they are worth it.
And so how many cards should the average consumer have out there?
So I would say pick your favorite airline, the one that you fly the most, get their co-branded credit card, because that gives you free bags, priority boarding, and sometimes some other perks, and a big sign-up bonus. And then get one of the cards with a transferable currency. So don't be crazy like me and have 27 credit cards, but maybe 2 to 3 to start. And then when you get a little more advanced, if you really want to get those big points balances, you got to open multiple cards, but there's all kinds of tricks going from there.
So speaking of the tricks here, what is the best way to rack up and redeem points and for free and discounted travel? Because that's what we really want. We want to travel for free.
Absolutely. And I think the best way to do that is to get those sign-up bonuses. But for most people, I would say start with a card where you're putting all your spending that has a currency like membership rewards from American Express that transfers to literally 18 partners. So whether that's Hyatt Hotels or whether that's Air France Flying Blue, because that's when you really maximize it, when you're using other carriers. You're finding the award that you want, that business class seat to Europe, and then you're transferring the currency over to book the actual trip.
How do you recommend somebody keep track of their points?
So I keep a spreadsheet,
Okay.
But there is services. The Points Guy app has a way to track all your balances. Really good way to keep track of it. There's other products out there that offer tracking services, but I just keep a simple Google sheet. It keeps it basic. I just recommended this to a friend. I said, just put the cards you have, the balances, and it gives you an idea of where you're at.
Okay, so if you have a spreadsheet, I imagine you have more than 5 credit cards then.
27.
27 over time.
Over time, and here's some other tricks around that. So not everyone's going to be obsessive like me, but I have huge balances because of that. But if you have a card, you get a big sign-up bonus. Don't close the account. Downgrade it to a no annual fee if you don't want to pay the annual fee the next year. So you've got that sign-up bonus. Downgrade it to a no annual fee version. Then you're not paying a lot of annual fees. I am, because I know I can maximize those cards. So I make sure I'm getting every single statement credit. I'm using the travel credits, using those rideshare credits and the Resi credits and all those things. But you want to keep track of that and make sure you're doing that.
How do you know when to put a credit card on the chopping block?
So if it's not giving you benefits, if you're not earning your annual fee back every year, then it's time to downgrade that card and not necessarily close it, because that can hurt your credit score. So even though I have 27 credit cards, I have excellent credit because I've kept those accounts open. It looks like I have a lot of credit available. I have a low credit utilization, and so you're really maximizing your credit score that way.
Interesting. How do you avoid common credit card fees and pitfalls?
So the first thing I would say is don't ever carry a balance. That's tip number one, because any reward you're getting from carrying a balance is going to be outweighed by the interest you're paying. So you want to be able to pay that card off in full every month. If you can't do that, don't even get in the game. Then it's not even worth it. Keep track of what credits are available on that card and just make sure you send a reminder to yourself once a month to use the credit. Just make sure you're getting the annual fees worth of value from that card every year.
All right, personal favorite question here, and I only have 30 seconds.
Yeah.
How do you know when it's time to buy the travel insurance? When it's time to click that button when you're booking a trip to protect it and get the insurance on top of what you're already paying?
Don't ever buy that travel insurance.
Really?
No, if you book your trip with one of the premium credit cards I've been hammering on, they include up to medical evacuation on that card, so you don't need additional insurance unless you're a skydiver or a deep sea diver or doing action sports. Then sometimes you'll need a supplemental coverage, but use a premium card that you know has the insurance you want on it. Medical evacuation, not all cards offer that.
None of the activities that I do count as action sports. Clint, thanks so much for taking the time here with us.
Anytime.
Thank you for watching. Stay tuned with Yahoo Finance for the latest financial news and updates.